Okay, what's going on, everybody? Sprinkle here, bringing you the Week 3 recap for the PWC D League. The first game we're going to talk about is a forfeit loss for Gamer RB, coach of the Sale Excadrilles, against Thunder Numbers, coach of the Minnesota Hyper Fangs. So Thunder, I believe, is 2-1. 2-1? No, 1-2. Gamer goes winless and is replaced by UKIT, who is now the coach of the Chicago Toros, who takes his place. We'll see how he performs next week. So, the very first actual game of the week is going to be ABP, coach of the GOS 12 Flagons, going up against Jellicent, overpowered, but like reversed, coach of the City Agrons, ABP bringing Mega Glade, Darmanitan, Registeel, Umbreon, Slowbro, and Coco. Jellicent bringing Webb's offense with Leavanny, Raikou, Staraptor, Mineshow, Kyurem, and Rhydon for rocks, it seems like. Tacked up on the end just to lay up rocks, so we'll just get right into the game. Leavanny leads off for OP Jellicent as ABP chooses Gallade and sets up a Sword Stance turn 1. Leavanny lays down Webs and is brought down to its sash by a Poison Jab on turn 2. The Leavanny then Leaf Blades, doing nearly half to the Gallade as it gets knocked out by a Drain Punch. Staraptor is brought in, and U-turns out immediately as ABP chooses to stay in against the Scarf Raptor, which pays off as the Rhydon is 2-KO'd by 2 Drain Punches. Staraptor then comes back in as ABP this time brings in his... hit my cat in the face with the door. Brings in Registeel to chew the Brave Bird. The Staraptor is then switched out for the Mienshao as ABP lays up his rocks. Jump Kick does not knock out the Registeel thanks to the Chople Berry, and the Mienshao dies to counter. Kyurem is then brought in to revenge kill with Earth Power. The Registeel dies as the Gallade comes in, chews a Shadow Ball from 85, and knocks the Kyurem out with a Drain Punch, healing off nearly all of the damage that it took. Staraptor then comes in, knocks Gallade out with a Double Edge. ABP then brings in the Slowbro, which is going to live a Double Edge quite comfortably, and knock out the Staraptor with a Scald. However, it's starting to look like Raikou could potentially clean up the game now. A Calm Mind is set off as ABP clicks Psyshock, doing 38 to the Raikou. The Raikou sets up a second Calm Mind as ABP chooses to poison it, which is a pretty smart play. And the Raikou knocks out the Slowbro with a Thunderbolt. Umbreon, if this Raikou is Z-move, depending on the Z-move, can knock out this Umbreon, but because it's not shiny, it can't have all-out pummeling. He instead reveals Z Signal Beam, which is not enough to knock out this gigantic fat piece of shit Umbreon, which knocks out the Raikou in conjunction with Foul Play and Toxic Damage, giving OP an 0-3 loss to ABP for Week 3. Yes. Excuse me. OP then moves, I believe, to 2-1, if I'm not mistaken, and ABP moves to a 2-1 record as well. Really well played from ABP. The Gallade play was really good from him, and just hyper offense didn't quite work out. ABP's plays were apparently too much. Next game of the week is going to be It's Whatever, coach of the Sacramento Nidokings, going up against Nathaniel, coach of the Dallas Staravias. Nathaniel bringing Jellicent, Silvally, Starmie, Virizion, Magmortar, and Mimikyu. And It's Whatever bringing the Ampharos Mega, the Greninja, Sylveon, Bronzong, Infernape, and Piloswine, getting right into the game. Silvally Ice leads off against the Mega Ampharos, which is immediately swapped out for the Bronzong as Nathaniel attempts to lay down a Toxic, which is blocked. He then parting shots straight into Magmortar as the Bronzong Toxics it. The Bronzong then protects as Nathaniel chooses to click Overheat. The Magmortar is then switched into the Starmie, predicting possibly the I don't know, predicting something to come in. Starmie then clicks Flash Cannon as a wish is thrown up in the air. Starmie is switched out for Silvally Ice as the Baton Pass gets sent into Infernape. Infernape doesn't get the wish, but Infernape is now in for free as a Shadow Claw is thrown off to do nearly half to the Jellicent. The Jellicent is going to Toxic the incoming Mega Ampharos, and then proceed to be switched out for the Virizion. The Ampharos Volt Switch is out as the Virizion comes in, and the Bronzong is brought in. The Virizion sets up a Swords Dance, seeing as Nathaniel sees this as his opportune time to start punching a hole, but the Bronzong has other plans, chewing a Close Combat, and getting up a Protect, as the Close Combat is going to bounce off, obviously, and Toxic, plus the defense drops, is going to put it in range of a Greninja Ice Beam. For sure. The Greninja comes in, Revenge kills the Virizion, as the Starmie comes in for some reason, and it is outsped and knocked out by a Dark Pulse from the Gran. And Mimikyu then hits the field. The Greninja, it chooses to break the disguise, as the red card forces in the Infernape, and an SD goes off. A Flare Blitz then proceeds to blow back with a crit, which may have mattered, but I'm not sure. Excuse me. Out comes Jellicent, out of range of Shadow Claw. It recovers up as the Mega Ampharos hits the field. Silvally Ice is brought in as the Ampharos Thunderbolts, nearly knocking it out, and giving him a free switch into Piloswine, as an Ice Beam does 0. The Piloswine is poisoned in exchange for the rest of the Silvally's life, and the Magmortar then hits the field. The Magmortar is then switched straight into the Jellicent, as an Earthquake goes off and does 38. Nate is going to Hex the Piloswine for 8%, as Freeze Dry does much less than Earthquake does to the Jellicent. A Recover is going to go off as the Greninja comes in, and Dark Pulse is going to be revealed to do minimal damage as it gets disabled, and the Greninja takes a Giga Drain, which is some interesting prep from Nate's side. Sylveon is then brought in as Nate misses Toxic on the incoming Sylveon, which is going to prove to be detrimental to him. Magmortar hits the field as the Sylveon sets up a substitute, essentially sealing the fate for the Staravias, as the Earthquake does break the sub, but the Gran is baton passed into. Magmortar does reveal to be Scarf, but Greninja does live one Earthquake and knock out the Magmortar with a Dark Pulse. The Dark Pulse is going to do enough to potentially two-shot with a flinch, but the recover is going to go off. Nate is going to recover until he's out of range of 2 Dark Pulses, which is going to be now, and he is then going to knock out the Greninja with a Giga Drain. Sylveon is going to come in next, and because he doesn't have enough speed for it, he is not going to be able to get a Toxic off before the substitute goes off, meaning that this game essentially ends, as there's not much this thing can do to the incoming Mega Ampharos on the next turn, which gets the sub-baton passed into it. The Giga Drain's not going to break the sub, and the Thunderbolt is going to be enough to two-shot the Jellicent, I believe, as he does break the sub with a Hex, but it's too late, as Thunderbolt is going to paralyze the Jellicent, meaning that less Hex damage, but it really did not matter in the grand scheme of things, because the Jellicent could not 1v1 the Mega Ampharos. So that is going to be that game. It picks up a 4-0 victory over Gesundheit, over Nathaniel, and we move on to the next game, which is going to have some interesting turns, an interesting stall thing going on in the middle of it, which I'm probably going to skip past between Celebi and a couple of Mons. So, we see Mega Lopunny, Sharpedo, Lantern, Metagross, Terrakion, and Cresselia coming from Joel, coach of the Philadelphia Fampies, up against Saul, coach of the Sail Excadrilles. Not the Sail Excadrilles, sorry, coach of the Borussia Pichus. He elects to bring his Mega Diancie, Thundurus Incarnate, Garchomp, Volcarona, Celebi, and Mantine. We get right into the game. Garchomp leads off against the Terrakion, forcing the Terrakion out into the Cress, as Sol makes a safe play turn 1 in Earthquakes. Celebi is then brought in on a Toxic, as the Cress is switched out for the Metagross. Scouting for Toxic, which Sol does reveal on turn 3. Natural Cure is going to go off, and the Metagross is, and Joel's going to make a nice play. Zen Headbutt catching the Thundurus coming in. The Metagross is then switched out for the Lantern, which is going to then proceed to live a +2 Z Psychic and knock out the Thundurus with Ice Beam, thus proving how effective Lantern is as a switch-in for electric types. Diancie then hits the field and is going to revenge kill the Lantern with an Earth Power, but the Lantern effectively did its job. Metagross is going to hit the field and scare out the Diancie. Zen Headbutts the incoming Volcarona, risking the Flame Body. Roost is going to go off as Sol makes a nice, as Joel makes a nice, reveals nice prep and Rock Tombs the Volcarona. He then proceeds to Bullet Punch as the Garchomp gets in for free, essentially, racking up some damage on the Metagross, which is going to be pretty important for the late game. He then gets a nice Toxic Raid as the Cress comes in. Celebi is then brought in on the Cress Psychics, which is not going to really do much to the Celebi at all. Metagross is brought in as Sol recovers up his Celebi. He then clicks Recover, I think scouting to see if it was actually Scarfed, because he did just click, I think he just clicked Zen Headbutt throughout this whole game. Could have clicked Bullet Punch at some point, but I don't remember. Anyway, Sol is going to Giga Drain a few times, knocking this Metagross down a little bit. Cress is then brought in on a Recover. Oh, man, my head. The Giga Drain is going to do 0 to the Cress as the Cress Toxics the Celebi is then going to Giga Drain yet again as Joel moonlights his Cress back up to near full health. Celebi is then switched out for the Volcarona, which dies to a Psychic. Celebi is then brought back in. He's going to Giga Drain, racking up even more toxic damage on the Cresselia. The Cresselia poisons the Celebi, and the Cresselia is going to Moonlight up as Mantine is brought in. But the Cress is just at a range where it can't really do anything anymore. He reveals Natural Gift, potentially Electric, but the Diancie is brought in for free. The Metagross then gets a free drop-in as it Bullet Punches the incoming Celebi. The Celebi recovers up as the Metagross clicks Zen Headbutt yet again. Bullet Punch does 28 off a crit as Sol Giga Drains the Metagross yet again. The Metagross then Bullet Punches yet again, gets another crit as Sol heals his Celebi up to a nice range of HP. Sol is going to recover up yet again as the Metagross clicks Bullet Punch, and then he's going to bring in his Garchomp to finally finish off this goddamn Metagross. Joel just settles for sacking off his Metagross as Sol clicks Earthquake. The Mega Lopunny is going to come in as Sol reveals some nice tech with the Endure Garchomp, and the Garchomp is going to chip down the Mega Lopunny slowly. The Mantine is then brought in on a return, which it does not take very well at all. Sol then baits out the Thunder Punch and goes hard into his Garchomp again as Joel falls for the bait. Potentially, I don't know if he was scouting for it or not, but he does Endure again, getting even more chip damage on the Mega Lopunny. He attempts to get 2 Endures, but fails, thus meaning the Mega Lopunny does live for another turn. Sol brings in the Celebi, which is going to live any one hit from this, obviously, as Joel elects to click Return and sack off his Mega Lopunny. Sharpedo's going to come in, and this whole time, Sol reveals to be a Cobra Berry variant, and he one-shots the Garchomp, putting him out of range for anything Tracheon can do aside from super effective coverage. Tracheon does miss a Stone Edge, which in the end doesn't really matter because Giga Drain put him out of range unless he did hit and then to a crit on the next turn. But the Celebi is going to knock out the Tracheon for a 3-0 victory. A long war of attrition, but in the end, Sol outlasts Joel, carrying him to a 3-0 victory. The second to last game of the week is myself, Smeargle, coach of the Hidden Valley Ralts, going up against Jake, coach of the Charlotte Beedrills. I myself elect to bring Gigalith, Seismitoad, Crobat, sorry about that, that was weird, Crobat, Excadrill, Mega Gardevoir, and Zoroark. as Jake elects to bring Jirachi, Donphan, Porygon 2, Mega Sceptile, Pangoro, and Thundurus Therian. Let's just jump right into the game. Seismitoad leads off against Mega Sceptile. Seismitoad is then hard switch into Crobat, as the Sceptile sets up a substitute. Sceptile is then switched out for the Jirachi, as the Brave Bird goes off, doing a nice chunk. The Seismitoad is then switched in on the Jirachi, as the Jirachi does get his Zen Headbutt flinch on the Seismitoad. The Zoroark is then switched in on his Zen Headbutt, and a U-turn is then sent off, as the Seismitoad is sacked off to a Play Rough plus Iron Head from the Jirachi. The Zoroark is then brought back in, but it actually reveals to be the real Excadrill, as Jake does reveal to be a Shuckleberry variant of Jirachi. Crobat is then brought in, as Jake lands a Fire Punch Burn on the incoming Crobat. The Crobat U-turns and knocks out the Jirachi, and the Zoroark is then brought in again. Pangoro hits the field, as the Zoroark U-turns out into the Gardevoir, which takes a knockoff. The Gardevoir megas up and throws a Wish Up in the air, as the Pangoro clicks knockoff yet again, failing to knock out the Gardevoir. The Gardevoir goes for Protect, as the Pangoro knocks off again, and the Pangoro puts the Gardevoir in range of everything on the team, as the Gardevoir knocks out the Pangoro with a Hyper Voice. Sceptile is brought back in, knocks out the Gardevoir with a Leaf Blade. Zoroark is then brought in, knocking the Sceptile down to a range where Poison will knock it out. Thankfully, Poison does go off on the Sceptile on this turn. The Thundurus is then brought in, as the Zoroark is switched out for the Gigalith. The Thundurus clicks Focus Blast and misses. The Gigalith clicks... I click Gigalith. I click Rock Blast, as the Porygon 2 comes in, giving me 2 hits. I then hard switch in my Excadrill, as the Porygon 2 goes away. Ice Beams, which is a decent read, and he freezes the Excadrill, so the Excadrill is essentially put out of commission, as Ice Beam is going to whittle down the Excadrill slowly. Excadrill is going to thaw out, but not in time. The Tectonic Rage is going to nearly knock out the Porygon 2, as the Ice Beam crits, knocking out the Excadrill. Sand is going to kill the Porygon 2. Zoroark is brought in on a double down against the Donphan, and the Zoroark falls to an Ice Shard. The Gigalith is then brought in, as the Donphan clicks Earthquake. A Toxic goes off, poisoning the Donphan. The Crobat is brought in on an Ice Shard, and the Crobat does die to 2 Ice Shards. The Crobat does die. The Gigalith is brought in, and the game is forfeited, giving Jake a 2-0 victory over me, which... another Hexy game in the favor of my opponent, but, yeah. That is going to be the end of this game. Jake pulling out a 2-0 victory, staying the last undefeated team, which, good for him. The final game of the week will be Tim, coach of the New Jersey Dwebbles, seems right, going up against Lagoon, coach of the Flint Muddy Water. Lagoon electing to bring Smeargle, Celesteela, Zardax, Alolan Muck, Volbeat, and Decidueye. Excuse me. And Tim electing to bring Emboar, Magnezone, Crustle, Slurpuff, Zangoose, and Uxie. Another low-tier squad from Tim, as he brings the Magnezone that he didn't have at the time, but he still brought anyway, but we allowed it because you'll see during the game it doesn't really have an impact throughout. So, we will get right into the match. Lagoon leads Muck, as Tim leads Crustle. Lagoon knocks off the leftovers, as Tim in return knocks off the Muck's Assault Vest. Lagoon poison jabs the Crustle, giving it a nice poison, chipping it slowly, as the Stone Edge is going to do a lot to the Muck. The Muck clicks knockoff, as the Crustle slowly dies. Lagoon gets a huge amount of damage off on his Muck, but the Crustle does eventually die soon enough. The Muck is revenge killed by the Emboar. Lagoon brings in his Smeargle. The Smeargle is going to Spore the Emboar, and Lagoon is going to get very lucky and get the maximum amount of sleep turns here as he gets up his rocks, his webs, and he Destiny Bonds. Ember wakes up, knocks the Smeargle out with a Flare Blitz, and in turn dies to the Destiny Bond. Lagoon brings in the Volbeat on the double down as the Uxie comes in. Lagoon is going to Tail Glow up as the Uxie is going to Psychic. Lagoon then sees an opportunity to get damage off, putting it in range of his Baton Pass recipient. The Uxie nearly dies, but unfortunately it doesn't, and then Baton passes into the big dog, Celesteela. Celesteela is going to take the Psychic. Lagoon gets a Spadef drop, which might come into play, but it actually doesn't. The Uxie clicks Thunderbolt. Lagoon eats the Weakness Policy, gets up to +2, +5 special attack, and that is going to essentially be the end of the game, as he now just reaches +6. Magnezone comes out. If it's an Uckaberry variant, it might take a Flamethrower, but it's not, so it doesn't. And essentially that is going to be the end of the game. Zangoose is going to hit the field, drop to a Flash Cannon, and the Slurpuff is also going to proceed to drop to a Flash Cannon. It's two very fast, very offensive games this week in the ABP and the Lagoon game, just naming them after the victors. Lagoon picking up a 4-0 victory, the biggest win of the week in tandem with Itz's win over Nate. So that is going to be week 2 of the PWC. Very relatively hacksless aside from, me being salty, but we will move on to greater things. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all next week. Goodbye.